Hello everyone, welcome to Macabre Popcorn. Today we dive into the horrific and chilling universe of a cinema classic, The Thing. A story which has spanned the decades with several adaptations, and which continues to influence the horror genre from which The Thing comes. How many remakes have been made? And what incredible anecdotes surround these filmings? This is what we are going to see together. Make yourself comfortable. Prepare your popcorn and get ready to shiver. Here we go. Chapter 1. The Origins. The Thing from Another World, 1951. It all begins in 1938 with the short story Who Goes There by John W. Campbell. This science fiction story features an extraterrestrial creature capable of taking on the appearance of its victims. The atmosphere of paranoia and isolation is already very present and will profoundly influence future film adaptations. 1951. Hollywood adapts this story, the title, The Thing from Another World. Directed by Christian Nyby and produced by Howard Hawks. This first film is a very free version of the short story. The alien is not a shape-shifting creature, but a sort of humanoid plant monster which feeds on the blood of its victims. The action is less focused on psychological horror and paranoia than in the short story and the following versions. But the film establishes an atmosphere of well-controlled tension. This film marks a turning point in the horror science fiction of the time. It focuses on fear of the unknown and the danger coming from elsewhere. In the middle of the Cold War period, where the anxiety of invaders, whether extraterrestrials or political enemies, was omnipresent in popular culture, it is one of the first films to explore the idea of an infiltrated enemy which will become a key element of the myth. The Thing, despite its differences with the original short story, this black and white film is a classic of the genre and lays the foundations of the myth The Thing. It met with critical and commercial success at the time and became a reference in the cinema of science fiction from the 50s. Chapter 2. The climax of the remake The Thing, 1982. Let's now move on to the most cult version, the one produced by John Carpenter. This remake is much more faithful to the short story and features a terrifying creature who can perfectly imitate its victims, with a cast led by Kurt Russell in the role of Mac Reddy and Keith David. A paranoid atmosphere and revolutionary special effects by Rob Bottin, The Thing is today considered a masterpiece. The story follows a group of researchers in Antarctica who discover an extraterrestrial creature capable of assimilating and imitating all forms of life. Quickly, the trust between the members of the team collapses, each suspecting the other of being a monstrous copy. This growing tension and the atmosphere of suspicion are masterfully staged by Carpenter, who plays on the silences, the oppressive music of Ennio Morricone, and breathtaking special effects. Yet upon its release, the film is a failure at the box office. It comes out at the same time as E.T. by Spielberg, a film with a much more positive vision of extraterrestrials. Result: The Thing is shunned by the public and the critics, but over time it has become a cult film of horror and science fiction cinema. Today it is even considered one of the best horror films ever made. What particularly struck spectators was the use of practical special effects at a time when digital technology was non-existent. Everything was designed in animatronics and ultra-detailed makeup. The result is terrifying, and even today these effects stand comparison with modern technologies. A cult scene, that of the blood test, where MacReady tries to prove that he is human by exposing everyone's blood to a heat source until the horror is brutally revealed. Chapter 3, the prequel, The Thing 2011. In 2011, a prequel was released directed by Matthijs van Heiningen Jr. This film tells the events which precede those of Carpenter's film in US, diving into the Norwegian station where the creature is discovered. The idea of telling what happened before 1982 is attractive because in Carpenter's film, the Norwegian station is already destroyed when McReady and his team explore it. However, the 2011 film suffers from a big problem. It relies too much on digital special effects, where the original used animatronics and realistic makeup. As a result, the atmosphere is less terrifying, and the film fails to recreate the magic of classic from 1982. What is a shame is that the film had initially planned to use practical special effects like the original, but in post-production, the studio imposed CGI, giving a less realistic and impactful rendering. Despite everything, the film remains interesting for fans of the first in particular by the references and the details which allow it to better understand the story. Chapter 4, The Future of the Thing. For several years, a new remake or reboot is under discussion. In 2020, Blumhouse announces that a project is in development. This film would be inspired by Who Goes There, but also from a more complete version of the recently found text entitled Frozen Hell. This unpublished manuscript contains additional elements which had never been published before. According to the producers, this new adaptation could explore new aspects of the story and deepen the mythology of the creature, and offer an even more frightening approach, something to follow. Chapter 5, Filming Anecdotes. Rob Bottin, the man behind the special effects, ended up in the hospital. He worked for more than 7 months without a break, sleeping in his studio and living under extreme pressure. Stan Winston, another special effects master, had to lend him a hand on certain scenes. A real husky actor. The infected dog in Carpenter's film is a real wolf dog trained to give a disturbing performance. He almost never blinks, reinforcing his mysterious aura.
Easy, 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 yes.
The living blood. The blood test scene required several takes to obtain the perfect effect, with incredible practical effects. The result is terrifying, incredibly original and mind-blowing in terms of the treatment of the human body. An alternative ending. Carpenter had shot another ending where he survived and proved that he was not infected, but he preferred to leave the ambiguity.
Je crois pas qu'on s'en sortira.
Bah, peut-être mieux pas.
Si tu te méfies encore de moi.
A soundtrack signed Morricone or Carpenter? Ennio Morricone composed the music for the film, but certain minimalist tracks are strongly reminiscent of Carpenter's style. It is rumored that the director himself composed certain parts, especially after the music was reused for Tarantino's The Hateful Eight. The iconic typography. The 1982 film uses the same typography as the 1951 film, a direct nod to the original. The film had a video game sequel in 2002, where the player must survive the alien threat with a paranoia system. Board game, The Thing Infection at Outpost 31 in 2017. A game where players must survive while suspecting others of being copycats. More recently, The Thing the board game in 2021 brought an even more immersive experience. Who Goes There is also a board game inspired by the short story by John W. Campbell, which gave birth to The Thing. This game, released in 2018, immerses players in an atmosphere of distrust and paranoia exactly as in the film. Each player embodies a member of the expedition and must manage his survival while avoiding being infected or infecting others if he has become the creature. Comics. Comics like The Thing from Another World, published by Dark Horse in the 90s, extends the story of the film 1982 and shows what happens after the end of the film. You know everything about The Thing. And what is your favorite version? Is this the 1951 version, Carpenter's from 1982, or the 2011 prequel? Let go in the comments. I can't wait to find out. Thank you for exploring this universe with me on Macabre Popcorn. If you like this video, leave me a like. Share your opinions or your favorite films in the comments. And above all, subscribe so you don't miss any of the next cinematographic journeys. See you soon for new dives into darkness and imagination. See you soon for another video.